Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please join me as I pray. Again, Father, we're thankful for the blessings of this new day you've given us and the opportunity to live in this great country and great state and great county and the cities we live in. And Father, we come to you this morning and I'm reminded about the words of a poet that said, "Isn't it strange that princes and kings and clowns that caper in sawdust rings and common people like you and me are builders for eternity. Each is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, and a book of rules, and each must make, ere life is flown, stumbling blocks or stepping stones." And Father, I thought about the poem and the job of these commissioners as they sit before us week after week and make decisions that affect the future of this county. And Father, we pray your wisdom on them. We pray you send your wisdom down and direct their thoughts and actions today so they'll benefit this county and all the citizens. We trust you, Lord, and we praise you today. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Here.
Commissioner Casterline.
Here.
Commissioner Russo.
Here.
Commissioner Laubach.
Here.
Judge Mills.
Here, unanimous. We have a quorum. And we have a bunch of people, citizens to be heard. How many of you want to speak now or? Okay, let's see. Miss Pat Murphy. Pat Murphy?
Pat Murphy, do you want to speak when we get to the right-of-way issue? You want to speak when we get to the right-of-way issue on the agenda
Do you want
or
to
now?
speak now?
Let-
All right, go
Okay.
ahead. Thank you.
Super. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Laubach and Commissioner's Court for allowing me the time to discuss this with council. I keep it real simple. I support my neighbors 100% with what they're trying to do. It's going to help our shorelines. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank
I
you
have
very
another
much.
meeting to go to.
Sir,
Thank you.
sir,
Yeah,
who is it?
That's on the right-of-way issue in West Lamar.
Okay,
He has two emails.
just for the record.
Oh, Pat Murphy. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sure Jennifer Shaw wants to speak after the presentation or now.
She wanted to ask questions,
Okay.
so I assume after.
I'm guessing that's the same with Christy Rutledge, Scott Hines. You want to speak now or ask questions later? Jeff Hutt, you want to speak now? Okay.
Jeff Hutt, 2201 Prairie Road. At South Rockport Neighbors a couple of weeks ago, Judge Mills, you said that this red beds, waste beds thing was a political stunt being hoisted upon you by political opponents. We've also had some supporters that have come up and said that this is a political stunt and it's hurting our local economy and especially our real estate. The environment is something that I do not think we should be playing politics with, and it is important. After you made that statement, we received a letter in the mail that said, from you, challenging, currently Aransas County is in the midst of several challenging problems that require serious, experienced leadership. For example, we are exerting strong pressure on the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to promptly and effectively address the mercury and waste issues in the pits near State Highway 188. It was my understanding from the last conversation that there was no mercury involved, that it was a different process. I think Mr. Casterline said that. I could be wrong, but that's what I understood. It seems to me that you first of all said we shouldn't take this as a political issue, and then you turn around and use a campaign mailer trying to drum up fear on people, midst of several challenging problems that require serious. Why is this serious if for so long we have been told it's not? My second issue is recently we've been getting letters come out of the judge's office that personally seem like it's just campaign propaganda on county newsletter. Please, the environment is a very important thing to us. People move here, people move back. Judge Mills, please do not make this a political issue. Thank you.
Patrick Kane. Anyone else? All right, as promised, I asked TCEQ to come down and give us a presentation of what's going on in the, I'll call it aluminum pits on between here and Centre. So with that, I think I know which ones are from Austin. Who's going to start? They have a flash. Thank you. Pardon?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eleanor Wayner. I am a project manager and geologist with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I'm in the remediation division, and I'm just here to provide you all with an update of current environmental activities at this former Copano facility. Okay, there it goes. Topics I'm really going to be focusing on about this facility include an overview of the location, the history, the bankruptcy settlement agreement that was established between TCEQ and the current owner of the facility in 2018. The Copano facility itself, the bankruptcy settlement topics I'm going to really be focusing on. There are several things in that agreement. I'm going to be focusing on just environmental assessment actions, current activities at that site, and also next steps. So the facility is located in two counties, that's San Patricio and Aransas counties. And that facility, I wish I had a little pointer that worked, but it's bisected by Highway 188. And if it actually is, that whole property is 11,000 acres in size. There's 4 bauxite waste disposal units, which we kind of term as beds 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those are the shaded kind of rectangular features within that property boundary. Thank you. And those span a total of 3,100 acres. So here I've provided just a quick an aerial that was shot, I think, in September 2020 of the beds, the way they looked at that time. And I've labeled them as like beds 1 is the one to the south, beds 2, 3 is over to the right side, and way in the back is bed 4, that's looking towards the north. So beds 1, 2, and 3 contain most of that bauxite waste. Bed 4, which is the one in the back, is also used for stormwater management, and it also receives that excess surface water, which is kind of overflowed through piping from bed 1. So just a real brief history, since we only have 15 minutes. The facility itself was used from 1969 until 2016, and that was originally it was Reynolds. Then Sherwin Alumina came along. They operated a refinery in Gregory that conveyed liquid, non-hazardous industrial waste generated from their bauxite ore processing approximately 10 miles to this Copano facility for disposal. So this facility has actually been around since the 70s and being operated. So that Copano facility also received an authorization in 2007 for disposal of municipal wastewater and water treatment plant residuals for purposes of establishing and maintaining vegetation on the beds. And in 2016 is when Sherwin Alumina unfortunately filed for bankruptcy protection. And at that time is when they ceased all the refining operations, and they also ceased all the bauxite disposal activities at the facility. Let's see. So a quick timeline, just a brief timeline here. That bankruptcy settlement agreement with TCEQ was established in May of 2018. That's the effective date of it. And it was established as part of the sale of the Copano facility to Copano Enterprises, LLC. It mainly established environmental, but it also had a lot of other requirements in there, including financial assurance and things like that, to ensure that Copano Enterprises properly manages and closes that facility. And it wasn't until June 2018 until when Copano Enterprises actually purchased and assumed complete management of the facility. So one of the key elements of that settlement agreement really requires Copano Enterprises to establish a community engagement plan. That included posting informational signage around the facility perimeter, including numbers to call for complaints and inquiries. They also were required to establish a hotline number, and they have a website to act as a kind of a repository for all kind of site-related documents and information that's being generated. And in that, it also requires Copano Enterprises to hold public meetings whenever requested by TCEQ. So the settlement agreement required Copano Enterprises to complete initial environmental assessment work at that facility. And we really focused initially on this preliminary groundwater assessment of the site, just due to its size and nature of storage of that bauxite waste. And that groundwater assessment report documented uranium, radium-226 and 228 combined, and fluoride in on-site groundwater samples. And as a result, that triggered additional site assessment actions under the TCEQ rules. So as a result, Copano Enterprises was required to complete what's called an affected property assessment report. And that's required under the TCEQ rules. And it included, among other things, the assessment and collection and chemical analysis of soil, groundwater, surface water, and sediment samples in the areas surrounding beds 1 through 4. So a total of 44 surface soil samples were collected from locations surrounding the bed. Over 100 groundwater samples were collected from 34 monitor wells, and water and sediment samples were collected from surface water bodies, Freshwater Lake and Swan Lake. I wish I could point, but it's over there on the right side. The figure to the right there just kind of shows just a figure out of the affected property assessment report, but it provides the locations of the monitor wells. They're the blue and the green dots around the beds. There are the red dots kind of on a grid spacing, and all around there are the soil sample locations, and then the red boxes to the right are where we collected the surface water and sediment samples. So the results of that APAR, or Affected Property Assessment Report, just documented that soil and groundwater samples were below TCEQ levels for protection of human health and surface water, and sediment samples were also below TCEQ human health and ecological screening levels for potential freshwater as well as saltwater ecological receptors. As a result, that based on the conditions and what they complied with in our state rule, TCEQ approved that report in September 20. And Copano Enterprises also held a public meeting at our request on December 15 to present the assessment findings to the public.
I have a question just now, if you don't mind. When you say that the samples were below the standards, does that mean they were favorable or unfavorable?
They were based on it's favorable, I guess.
Thank you.
I use it as detection. Things were detected there, but based on our risk assessment evaluations for those particular COCs, they are below our health risk standards.
They are below where you would think you needed to take further action, or it's more dangerous.
Yeah, we call it remedial. Take it forward into the remediation phase where we have to deal with the cleanup of that issue. So we did not progress to that step with this site at this point.
I think we're just talking, people here below, we don't know if that means worse. And what you mean is better. Below is better.
Better. My apologies. Any other questions before I progress on here?
Well, how frequently are those monitoring wells sampled?
Primarily right out of the gate. They were, as part of the bankruptcy settlement, they were initially, first we did a well integrity inspection and evaluation to ensure that they were actually correctly screened properly to the water bearing units that underlie that site. And so there's a little bit of that, and then they were sampled initially with that preliminary groundwater assessment. And then those same groundwater wells were then carried forward and sampled on a quarterly basis for a whole year to kind of document the site, conditions, to see if there's any variability in the groundwater flow conditions, or just, distribution of the contaminants and things that might be picked up.
Are they still being monitored, or would that just happen until 2020?
That has not occurred because the assessment is done. They've fully assessed the release. Nothing was above a residential or ecological risk-based level. So, at this point, I'll kind of touch base when they're going to be monitored again in the next few slides.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see. So just current actions. So at this time, Copano Enterprises is required to continue to implement these measures to prevent bauxite dust from leaving the beds, which has been the issue, I think, with bed 1, because it's exposed, that bauxite waste is exposed. And they have to submit those semi-annual status reports to TCEQ. Actions, those dusting measures include placement of hay or other authorized organic materials over exposed areas, as well as covering or applying water and regrading existing levees. So all stormwater and water used for irrigation or dusting prevention is required to remain on site. So that's kind of what's going on right now after we progressed past the effective property assessment report. So under the next steps.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Under that information about the stormwater and the water used for irrigation being controlled, is there a concern about the groundwater migrating to the bay or to any adjacent property at this time?
At this time, no, because there was a detailed site hydrogeologic evaluation presented in the APAR, that effective property assessment report. And part of that demonstration was to perform a geotechnical, like a subsurface investigation to determine what water bearing units are and where are they connected to surface water. And no, what was found is there are 2 upper water bearing units that are about 20 feet below ground surface at the site. That's one of the first zones that's encountered for groundwater, and that is not connected through to any of the surrounding surface water bodies, including Port Bay and also Freshwater and Swan Lake.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So next steps, just under that bankruptcy settlement agreement, ultimately, Copano Enterprises is required to close beds 1 through 4. And they are required to submit these plans for closure and also post-closure care to TCQ for approval. The final closure report for bed 1 is required to provide an updated release assessment, and that's going to be due in 2028. And unless unauthorized or unless otherwise approved, the closure report for bed 2, 3, and 4 is also going to have to provide an updated release assessment by, I guess that closure report would be due 2048. So it's sort of, there's a couple of iterations where they're going to have to document that, they're no longer, that the conditions at the site haven't changed each of these closure events. So implementation and post-closure care for bed 1 and bed 2 through 4 is going to be triggered upon TCQ approval of those closure reports.
So that's in the process of being done now. TCEQ is reviewing that, or have they submitted the reports yet?
They have not submitted their plans for closure or post-closure care of the beds yet. That for bed, I'll go back to that one slide. The closure report for bed 1 is due 2028, but the closure plan for that is due 2 years prior to that date. So that would be in 2026.
Okay.
We would be anticipating that. Okay. And the same thing, for closure report, it's 2 years prior to 2048. So that's kind of how that would look. So that's all I had. I don't want to appreciate taking up your time, but if you do have questions, we're here. We have region representatives and also representatives from our remediation division. So,
Any questions from the commissioners?
What are the depth of the wells, the test wells?
The monitor wells at the site are screened in it's like 15 to 20 feet is below the ground level. So the screens are tied about 10 feet in thickness, but each zone, there's 2 zones. There's a zone A and a zone B, and zone B is about, 15, starts at 15 to 20, and then it's 35 to 40 is the second zone.
There's of course been a lot of concern about radioactivity and that sort of thing. The
Yeah.
levels that y'all showed on the levels that were shown in your report as compared to normal Texas soil in the area. Are they elevated or about the same?
No, and actually this APAR, they did actually, we requested they do a little background study, at least for soils. And, uranium and radium 226 and 228 have established cleanup, like assessment and cleanup numbers for that particular media. And so we really targeted kind of finding those, what would be the norm out there. We do have no indication based on also that's the soil data that they collected that it's extremely high or anything that's above that background, those background levels. And they were collected, I think, from a mile and a half away. They collected 10 soil samples, 10 surface soil samples.
Okay.
Based on things that are going on today, have the waters of Copano Bay, Fort Bay, including the estuary and the ecosystem, been adversely affected by the sites?
They were sampled, at least freshwater and Swan Lake were sampled, and everything was below a freshwater and also human health ecological screening benchmarks. And that included evaluation of uranium and radium, at least the ones that we had actual numbers for. So there was really nothing in the ecological risk assessment that was presented in the APAR that required a remedy, or indicated a risk.
Do y'all have any routine test sites that you take in the bay? I was told by somebody at UT that y'all had one around the Port Bay Bridge and some other sites. Are you aware?
No, I'm not aware of anything, but perhaps.
Yeah.
I want to say that one of our partners.
I know that there are what, 24 sample sites in Aransas County and Calhoun out of Aransas River. That I sat on a committee for 3-year committee where they were talking about non-point discharge pollution. And there were a number of sites that were located throughout the area. Are they, whenever they monitor those, are they looking for radium and uranium and that sort of thing? Or are they just looking for non-point source pollution? Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, I would like to mention that our guests could go use the microphone so the people listening
Well,
through
yeah, I
Zoom.
was just gonna say, can we pass that mic
Or
over
the
there? to each
microphone over
one
there.
as they speak?
Okay.
Y'all need me to repeat anything?
Yes,
Identify
please.
yourself.
So we do have,
Identify yourself.
I'm Melanie Edwards. I'm the water section manager in the Corpus Christi region office. And we do have some routine sites that we do surface water quality monitoring. I would like to get y'all the specifics on where they're located. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. But we do routine parameters like BOD, ammonia. So I don't think we're monitoring for what you're specifically asking.
But to take that question a step further, if it was requested at some point by the Commissioners Court or other official bodies, could you add a sample for radioactivity to those tests? I don't know what's involved in it, so.
Yeah, we've got a group that it's like a coordinating monitoring that we look at for stuff that's of concern.
Yeah.
So it could be
y'all
considered,
You
definitely.
don't test for mercury or anything on those sites either? That's for mercury, I think. Don't you test for mercury?
There's certain sites we do metals,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure for that site. I'd have to get information on. I could get that. Let me look it up now and I'll get back with y'all.
You know, it would seem to me like because of the attention that the beds have brought, that it would behoove everybody to put an official sampling site or sites within a reasonable area of those ponds. Because, you know, if there ever was a problem, that would be the first indicator, would be those sample sites, because they're taken on a regular basis.
We do, yeah, quarterly sampling.
And this is Mary Smith. I'm a section manager in the remediation division of the TCQ. So, you know, the site sediment and surface water samples were analyzed for radionuclides and for mercury.
Good.
I have a question. And Mary, I believe that I spoke with you on the phone a few weeks ago. And so I thank you for this information that you presented to us. When there was a public meeting on December 15th of 2020, do you know if any members of the Commissioners Court attended that?
I'm not aware, Ellen.
Notification was provided, but I'm not, I don't have the list of attendees. That would be, Copano Enterprises could provide that.
Does anyone on the Commissioners Court remember attending that meeting?
I don't even remember getting a notice of it, but I don't know if it would have gone out to individual commissioners anyway.
Thank you.
Have there been any reported discharges or overflows from the beds in your history?
I'll speak to the region because that's one thing that we are very closely watching as they progress through this closure, at the time when they have to reassess. So if there are new things that they're having any discharges, that's a definite.
But have there been any recorded unauthorized discharges?
We're not aware of any reported discharges from the beds.
How about during Harvey?
Well, post the Copano Enterprises came on board after Hurricane Harvey. So all of the assessment work that, if there was any, I defer to the region for the historic, but the potential contaminants were assessed in that APAR after, and that would have captured anything after Hurricane Harvey.
During Hurricane Harvey, we had a team that went out. It was the EPA contractor with TCEQ, and they went to the beds and they did not see any evidence of a discharge.
One of the questions I got was whether there had been a discharge of reddish looking water, not after Hurricane Harvey, but last summer after we had those huge 27-inch rains. Is that ringing a bell? Did anyone report that to you?
No.
I don't know. I can't recall who that comment came from, but someone claimed that they reported it to someone, whether they called the hotline on the sign or called TCEQ. I'm not sure. No, nothing that you know of about red water escaping the containment. Most of my questions had to do with, is the containment really working? You seem to be telling us that it is.
No, ma'am, but we can take that back with us and try to verify that for you.
And then I also wanted to ask, I know you mentioned that the settlement agreement says that if you ask Copano Enterprises LLC to hold a public meeting, they must. Is that still true? Could you ask them to hold another one now? I think December 2020, a lot of us were kind of holed up and not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think we could, I think we could discuss that internally and discuss it with them.
Okay.
More questions from the commission?
I have some from questions that people sent me, but I thought it would be better to wait until the public speaks. And then if anybody has not asked some of these questions, I might need to add them at the end.
Certainly.
There's some real concerns expressed by the citizens here in Aransas County about the Copano sites. Can the TCEQ today give us assurance that the community, the waters, the people are safe as of today?
Yeah, based on the testing results, the surface soil, sediments, groundwater, we haven't had any indication of an exceedance of a critical residential protection level there. So at this point.
What does closure mean exactly? A lot of the questions I get kind of have to do with, are we ever going to totally remove the beds, or are we just containing them sort of forever? And if so, what does that mean? Does it just mean making sure the berms are always there? Do they get buried?
Great question. Yeah, closure is the act of kind of taking that, because these units are technically still kind of operational. They have a waste registration with the TCEQ. And so their obligations are to eventually close them when they are kind of taken. And that means taking them completely out of service, not using them to just kind of, there's kind of manage anything or do anything with them. It's essentially to physically close them. There are requirements.
We don't remove them. They haven't accepted waste since 2016, but when you say close, I just don't have a picture of what that means.
It's closure means essentially to take them out of service, and
they're already out of service. What more are we doing? What more does closure mean besides not accepting waste?
Permanent. It's just a permanent closure.
Can never accept waste in the future.
Exactly. And that's, I think what it is there are options to close it in place with those bauxite waste residues. The other alternative is to, like you mentioned, dig it up and dispose of the, all the waste there.
Does that ever happen with red beds?
I have, I don't know. Those are the regulatory requirements for closure, are kind of to do that piece to kind of address the proper closure of the wastes, either in place or physically remove them and properly dispose of them. Or it also requires performance of a release assessment again to see if their activities, even if they were just sitting out there, that if they've impacted the surrounding media, the soil, groundwater, surface water, sediment again. So
it seems like, roughly speaking, we're talking about they either stay there forever and you just monitor containment, or you physically dig them up and move them somewhere.
And that's why we have post-closure care requirements in addition to closure. So if they don't do a clean removal, then they have to care for them and
sort of forever. That's what I'm getting to. I don't think, as far as I know, red beds are never dug up and put someplace else. I don't know where you would put them. So we were really talking about they stay there forever and you contain them. I don't know if you bury them or you just make sure that the levees are always there.
Part of that, it's really, we're focused on if they are closed in place like that. The concerns are infiltration from rainfall, surface water runoff. So
It's not
you
going down,
have
it's
to
not going
have-
sideways.
Yeah,
and it's not-
exactly. So the other thing is bed one does have a leachate under drain system in it. So we are requiring them to ensure that that leachate generation is reduced as part of the closure. And so the overall, the footprint is to reduce any infiltration through the, anything that's going in through the waste that could potentially leach to the subsoil and groundwater.
And then, as I
Over
understand,
time.
what worries us people, red beds in general have two things going on. One is the heavy metals, uranium, whatever the trace things. The other is the very caustic substance that they use to treat it. So you've got a very high pH. I don't really have any notion of whether that gets watered down over time as it gets rained on, or is that just sort of there forever?
That's part of the closure. It's sort of, they can do things with amendments, and that's what they're doing out there now, is to kind of make them beneficial to be able to grow or support vegetation, and sort of reduce that, at least at the top layer. But yeah, there's still bauxite waste underneath, whatever they're putting on there to kind of reduce the
I guess what I'm
pH.
asking is, right now you wouldn't want the water to flow out because it's a very high pH. Is over time,
Correct.
does there ever come a time when it becomes less of a high pH because it gets, I don't know, rained on or diluted? Or is it just kind of always an issue of needing to tamp it down and make sure it doesn't get loose?
The pH issue is to ensure that way it's a waste containment issue. So if it's left in place, we have to make sure it's going to be kind of sitting there.
It doesn't
kind of
naturally
protection.
dilute, I guess, is what I'm asking. Rainfall doesn't eventually, it's just always there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, questions from the public?
Looks like
Let's
everybody's
start with
questions were
Patrick
answered. It
Kane.
was time for, yeah, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Kane, 1123 East Cedar, Rockport. Commissioner Cheney, thank you. I think you've hit upon what many of us want. We want some independent testing sites outside of the red beds so that we know if something is leaching. Ms. Weiner, your presentation showed that there was uranium and radium 226 / 228 at the sites. Not presented today, but there are test results from February 2nd, 2007, that show the regulatory limits were exceeded. 14 billion year half-life for uranium, 1600 year half-life for radium. So that stuff didn't just go away overnight. And that gets to where my concerns are, is if it exceeded the limits, we have pictures on social media for red bed 1 that shows that red dust in the air, right? So, and then clearly, that's an issue that you mentioned, that the containment of the red dust is a problem. But if it was radioactive at that time, how much of that went into our environment and what's the potential for it in the future? Because it was there and it did not go away with a 14 billion year half-life. So that's why a lot of us are concerned that there is an issue. Maybe the regulatory limits were changed and it's no longer a problem, but it's, when we say a limit was exceeded, it doesn't mean that it's still not good for us, right? It's probably more than what the local environment had. So those were my concerns, but yes, testing is what we would like to see by a company other than, or by someone other than the company itself. Thank you.
Yeah, those are all good questions. I mean, the radionuclides in those are, we do have groundwater and soil numbers for those, and they're based on a drinking water resource. Like it assumes you have a drinking water aquifer under the facility where we're actively drinking water from. So that was the original default criteria for the release assessment. And so that information was presented in their preliminary groundwater assessment report. And that prompts the need to perform a site-specific assessment of the site to determine those site-specific exposure potentials things that are relevant to the actual site itself. So that's the need for performance of a drinking water survey, which was also performed as part of this after that was triggered, and also a class 3 groundwater determination, which kind of indicated, it further evaluated the hydrogeologic, those aquifers under the site are highly saline. And so, you know, based on the receptor information that we had, there's no wells, no drinking water wells within a 1/4 mile radius of the facility. So that's kind of where we were kind of basing that initial default release assumption. So that basically requires they do a complete site assessment and carry that forward to our Texas Risk Reduction Program rule, which is the first part, is to submit that affected property assessment report to evaluate the site-specific hydrogeology, receptor information, and address the eco pathway, the potential for ecological receptor.
Are you familiar with the 2007 tests that he's referring to? And do we know where they were? I mean, was it further away and that's why those numbers wouldn't be relevant now? What?
Well, that's something we'd be interested in seeing. We did see a kind of flash on the screen of the document, but it's not something we're familiar with. We did share it with our TCQ staff in the radioactive materials section, and they saw a citation. It looked like it was a DISH's citation that was meant to be trigger the use of respirators for workers that were working with waste material, essentially. And what he said to me was that the levels look close to background. So the regulatory levels, it's not clear to us what that exceedance is, but we'd really like to see the document itself and look into it more. Okay.
Yeah, you're next.
Scott Heim, 611 North Sultan Beach Road. I hate to wing it when I only have 5 minutes, but there are a couple of things. That public meeting that they had November 7th was right at the height of the COVID lockdown. The notification was absolutely inadequate. And it appeared to be a sort of a strategic move to say we had a public meeting, but geez, nobody was interested. I would recommend revisiting that. The APAR that you referred to found that the groundwater movement was generally speaking north, which would be downland, downhill towards the bay and towards Swan Lake. What you see on that is that the soil testing sites were actually southwest, which would appear to be a friendly location for soil sampling when the movement of everything would appear to be downhill. And so some of us are skeptical. Some of us feel like there has been a friendly method of taking samples, and we're skeptical. And so why we're asking for additional, maybe independent testing is because we get the appearance that there's been a friendly methodology that might not uncover some things. That radioactive test that exceeded regulatory limits was in an old email that was gotten through some public information requests. And it appeared that it was something that should have been a cause for concern and additional testing. And yet it appears to have been buried. And once again, we don't know. None of us are saying we know, but we have cause, we feel, to be skeptical. We see in court documents during the bankruptcy, TCEQ says that there's a massive environmental liability out there. Those words have weight, especially in a court proceeding, massive environmental liability. We have emails from Sherwin, from their environmental manager, saying that they knew all along that this would be a long closure process. He said in that email that they estimated that it would be a 50 to 100 year process. Alcoa is publicly traded. They have to, in SEC filings, they have to disclose their set-asides, for contingent liabilities. And they said $36 million just for their share of this. And they made clear that it was only their share during the time that they owned it. And yet what we see now is they've significantly, down to 20%, reduced how much they feel like they're going to have to spend. And it looks like the closure is going to take a fraction of the 50 to 100 years that Sherwin said they thought it was going to take. We don't know, but we're skeptical because of these seeming discrepancies. It appears that maybe the requirements have mutated since they thought it was going to take 50 to 100 years. And a lot of concerned citizens want to be sure that that's based on good hard science and not just a relaxing of regulatory requirements. I have some other questions since I shortcut that, and I'll keep them as short as possible. We asked about, has there ever been a discharge of any sort from any of the ponds into waters of the state? And there's a reason I ask it that way. If yes, were these point source, non-point source, or both? And I'll give you a copy of these. Have any of the dikes ever needed repair or been otherwise compromised? Was sewage sludge ever introduced into any of the ponds of the Copano facilities? And I know there's a debate about, treated waste and everything else, but sewage sludge has a specific meaning, and it has been declared a hazardous substance. And there's reason for us to think that's there. And so we have additional concerns. Has the rule of 20, or otherwise referred to as 20X, been used to determine the potential chemical concentrations and or toxicity of leachate in the areas outside of the ponds? That has a very specific meaning and a reason for me to ask it. The APAR document talks about the known extent of contaminated groundwater. I think it says groundwater contamination. And I do understand that a lot of that has to do with salinity. But if you look at the document, they are required to test wells within half a mile, not a quarter, half a mile of the known extent of groundwater contamination. But it looks like what they did was draw a line around the ponds, and the known extent was limited solely to the perimeter of the ponds themselves, which it seems to us that perhaps if we tested further away, we would have a larger known extent. They very conspicuously bought up properties to the west of the ponds and tore down houses and moved trailers and acquired the ground wells. You mentioned about the ground wells being for human consumption. If you look at the APAR, there are a number of wells that might have been a concern that they said, well, we just couldn't find them. Am I out of time? I've done my best. Would you like the questions?
Scott,
Okay.
if you have extra copies of those questions and could let the court reporter and me, okay, perfect. I'll get her one. No, I'll get it from Carrie. Thank you.
Jennifer Shaw. She's on.
Jennifer?
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me? I'm here by Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Some specific points relating to the APAR report. I've read it, as have several other people in the community. There was not a single water well test done outside of real estate owned by Alcoa. We've recently been contacted by a man on a street called Retreat Road, which is on the west side of Port Bay. He's drilling a well. He's building a house. He is extremely concerned that no one has tested, quote unquote, off-site. Nothing in the APAR tested the actual red mud in beds 2 or 3, which are the ones completely in Aransas County. So as a consequence, while you're testing groundwater underneath the red beds or immediately adjacent thereto on the property, because of the alert that was published by EPA in October of 2021, we want to see the actual red mud in the beds extensively tested. We want to know what the radioactive elements are. We want to know how much of them are. Again, to repeat what triggered all of this, EPA put out a written warning as to bauxite waste, red mud, and said, we still do not completely understand all the potential radiation exposure risk TENORM presents to humans and the environment. To humans, we have approximately 2 billion with a B cubic feet of red mud sitting in our county. It's concentrated. It's not at the same level of dilution you're finding in groundwater. We know absolutely nothing about the radioactivity of the actual red mud. We know absolutely nothing about the caustic chemicals that are actually in the red mud, yet they are open to the air. TCEQ has admitted today in their slide presentation that these materials are evaporating into the air, and that is the concern. The sample that we found in reports produced to me by TCEQ from 15 years ago, the hot sample was taken by a TCEQ employee out of bed number 1. No one should be surprised by the existence of those 15-year-old radioactivity samples. And a group of us have read every document that has been produced to us by TCEQ. There has been no other testing of the chemical and radionuclide nature of the red mud itself. If we're expected as a community to accept these materials in our county for all eternity, we deserve to know what is there. Alcoa, Copano Enterprises, does not even have a radioactive materials license for these red beds. TCEQ perhaps was surprised as we were to see this warning from EPA. And one last point to just make everybody feel good. Alcoa has now hired a company called Tetra Tech to be their consultant. Tetra Tech's employees were criminally convicted of felonies in San Francisco for fraudulently altering radioactive soil reports. That gives us no confidence at all.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Any rebuttal to any of these questions so far? No? Okay, yes, ma'am.
So bear with me while I look at some reports on my phone and in some paper here. There was a collapse of a red bed site in Hungary. And as a result, Christy Rutledge, 1411 Dana Drive. There was a collapse of a red bed site in Hungary that flooded some rivers. It flooded homes. It killed about a dozen people, I believe, initially. It destroyed all marine life, and they did a cleanup. And it was, as a result, Alcoa has done a report in January of 2021 that I have found on the website or on the internet of all of their bauxite facilities across the world. And it's an Excel spreadsheet, and they had to answer certain questions. One of the questions was, has this facility at any point in history failed to be confirmed or certified as stable, or experienced notable stability concerns as identified by a third-party engineer? And the answer regarding the Copano bed site was no. But my question is, do we have independent test results of the stability of these ponds? Because there is an extreme hazard risk if one of the ponds were to fail or to leak. Question number 17 has a formal analysis of downstream impact on communities, ecosystems, and critical infrastructure in the event of catastrophic failure been undertaken, and to reflect final conditions? If so, when did the most recent assessment take place? And the answer was yes, regarding our Copano sites, and that was in 2012. So we need a lot more transparency. I understand that Copano Beds LLC was established through the bankruptcy agreement settlement with TCEQ when they got involved, but this is owned by Alcoa. We are getting reports from a company who has a vested interest in not finding anything. We need independent testing so that we know exactly what is in, not necessarily only in the red beds or a quarter mile out or a half mile out, but even further out. And it's the soil also that needs to be sampled, not just the surface groundwater. I want to read to you some things related to that Hungary site, and also some risk factors. And this kind of hits home for me. Cleanup after the Hungary dam break revealed that arsenic levels remain high, very high 2 years later. So we're not talking just radionuclides, we're talking many other heavy metals that are toxic, and in fact, bladder cancer incidence and cause of mortality is much higher in workers in bauxite plants. My husband died of bladder cancer 2 years ago. Is it related to this? No. I don't know. I'll never know. I know he fished in Port Bay often. I have his fishing journals where he journaled every time he fished, detailed where he fished, what he caught. When they did the cleanup in Hungary, they tested fish because they found this high arsenic level in the soil, in the riverbeds, and in the home properties. And what they found is the permissible level of arsenic in fish and fishery product is 1 milligram per kilogram. And what they found in the sample in Hungary was the trace of arsenic was at 70.8. And fish 2, that's fish 1, fish 2 registered at 93.2. And fish 3 was at a staggering 104.5. So are we testing our food sources in Port Bay? Are we testing far enough out? Are we only testing on the property so as to not find anything? Are we running tests on all of the heavy metals that could be related to or are known to be related to bauxite plants? And are we testing far enough out in homes around there? My daughter tried to buy a property off of Leo Miller Road in 2018, and indeed, she found that there was no well available on that property and that Sultan water was pumped in all the way over for the home in Leo Miller. She backed out of that property because of her concern after looking at Google Maps. Some of the things that need to be also tested for and made available regularly, not just once in a while, aluminum, arsenic, chromium, nickel, and all of the radioactive materials that are known to be affected by bauxite sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Laubach, I think you might have 1 or 2 questions.
Let me check and see if these questions are really quite different. Hold on. One of the questions that I was asked to.
You also have the 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes. One question was, we have heard of proposals for using plants planted on site to uptake toxins out of the soil. Is anything like that going on here? And can you tell us anything about what you do with the plants after they have concentrated the toxins into their leaves and stems?
That's not something that's
not something
you
here.
know, I would anticipate if anything is proposed for like a closure plan, post-closure care plan is where they would propose some sort of remedy. Plants can be used for a soil cover system to kind of support that, but it's basically grasses, native grasses and things. Just my expertise in that, using kind of phyto plants and things to assist with cap cover systems, stability.
Erosion and
Yeah,
dust control. I
correct.
think part of the
Not
concern was
for-
if the plants aren't deliberately being used for that, should we be worried that if you do a plant cover and then it later is burned off deliberately or just by an accidental wildfire, is there a concern that the toxins can be drawn into the plants and then get into the air with the smoke?
That's the kind of the things that we would be looking for. I mean, in whatever they're proposing for closure. So
Someone asked me if the pits have a liner or is it just a natural sort of
the pits, as
clay?
I understand them, were constructed in Reynolds back in the late 60s, and they were using the recompacted clay that's out there. And bed 1 does have that under drain system. It's like a leachate collection system, and so they're they do have that recompacted clay liner. It's pretty that clay liner is basically kind of what comprises the clay unit there. That's about 15 feet thick.
Okay.
And then you hit the next water bearing unit for groundwater under that.
And then the containment walls, I guess we're talking about the berms now.
Berms
Is there
themselves.
can you describe to us the regulatory procedure for ensuring that they stay?
That's part
containing-
of that's part of their semi-annual reporting that they're doing to TCEQ. It's sort of, they do have regular inspection and maintenance that they perform. It's not something that they go out there, I think it's daily, that they would be kind of just making sure that site's being operated so they don't have any of these discharges. So that's something that is, the integrity of those dike systems are critical because they do have, they're exposed. So as far as I know, those were the soils that were pushed up when they dug that, kind of installed those surface impoundments. So they do need to be maintained because of the erosion and surface water runoff. We look for any of that as part of
And I
that.
think my last question is, at what percentage fill capacity are the current beds? I believe that could either be a question of how full are they of waste or how full of their water. So if you could address
I don't know
that.
the exact number of that. I'd have to research that and get back with you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Debbie Griffith. I'm at 107 Bufflehead Lane. And I just had a few questions after hearing the presentation. One, I'm wondering if y'all can tell us who specifically from TCEQ is assigned to monitor compliance of the red mud beds. Secondly, y'all seem to be unaware about the 2007 report that I believe either Patrick or the other gentleman mentioned. And it makes me concerned thinking about reports in 2048. Okay, the continuity of information and availability, and many of us may not be here in 2048. So it does kind of make me a little concerned about those closure dates. And then the other is that, and it could be purely my fault, but when was that website, copanobeds.com, when was it placed on the internet and fully established right now with all the links that it has? Because I've Googled many times and never have come across that website, and nowhere does it say on there when it was published. Law websites will indicate the date that report was made or something, and I didn't see anything like that on there. So I wonder when their compliance with putting that report and all the data out there was made. And then I've got two more. I really recommend also full disclosure and attention to the STI situation. That's going to be coming up very soon about monitoring and public data being available, because I'm very interested in wanting to make sure their compliance with what's going into Chiltepin Creek, Aransas River, and then into Port Bay. I'm concerned about salinity and the impact to the ecosystem, as well as any other hazardous materials. And then last, and I'm not sure who to direct this to, but the Aransas County Value Fund, I think, has sent out several statements saying that the county has been involved in this whole process, which I've yet to hear really anything about that from anything that they've said about the county or the commissioner's court being involved in anything with regard to this. And then the last thing I read talked about somebody, I don't know who, interviewing or talking with a retired engineer. That means absolutely nothing to me. And so trying to put that material out there that you talked to a retired engineer and about how safe it was means nothing. And so really carries no weight, no value. And it's this type of information that TCEQ talks about and puts out on a website that's of value to me. And so I really encourage that that be the process to be followed in the future.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of your presentation, and I think end of the questions. I appreciate you coming down and making your presentation. I think you've got a few questions that you're going to be taking back to Austin or Corpus or somewhere and come back hopefully with some good answers. We have a lot of concerns in this county, as you can see, and hopefully we can do something about their concerns and make them feel a little bit better about what's going on. Thank you. And if you need to leave, you're more than happy or more than ready to go.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Before you guys go, could you possibly leave us your cards if you're carrying some? Thank you.
Yeah. Also, before y'all leave, could you make the judge or the clerk aware of a contact number where we can produce a list of questions and concerns rather than just having them come out of nowhere. At any given time, we can have a list of things that y'all has some time to research. You can get a phone number or address or something and get it back to the judge. Something I'd like to bring up, I just checked on UT Port Aransas and the Heart Institute are in the process of applying for a grant to do testing in Port Bay and off of Swan Lake and put regularly test sites in to try to get stuff. They said he'd let me know the status of it.
Yeah, that's going on. Carrie. Might want to give that out to the public or let them be aware that it's out there.
Are the little pamphlets? Okay.
All right. Consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent items on the agenda. And I would also note that we received a donation of $25 cash from Jeff and Christy Hutt for the Aransas County Animal Control. And I thank them and I congratulate Lori Cesar for her continuing work with that association with our department at the Animal Control.
All right, motion made.
I'll second it.
Second, Commissioner Cheney. Roll call.
Mr. Cheney,
Aye.
Mr. Castelo,
Aye.
Mr. Russo,
Aye.
Mr. Law,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Approve or disapprove the new 2021 appointments of officers for the Historical Commission. I make that motion.
I'll second it.
Second, Commissioner Cheney. Betty, or who's supposed to be on this one?
Pam's here.
I'm here.
Pam's here too. Okay. You have the list of people in front of you?
I do.
Okay.
Pam's coming to the podium.
I'm just an advisor to the commission, actually.
Betty, are you online?
I am.
You going to give us the list?
You got
The list was in your packet.
I mean, just tell the public.
Oh, you want me to tell
Yeah,
you
just-
who?
Yeah.
We have Sandy Garrison Bridges, Jerry Brundrett,
Mark Eshelman, Laura Fox, David Hatman, Mike Gear, Colin Jackson, Sandy Richard, Rick Smith, Roberta Scherer, myself. Bubba Castelline is our liaison from the Commissioners Court. Pam Stranahan is an advisor. Monica Burdette and Cheryl Livingston are both advisors.
All right, any discussion on that? If not, roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 5.
I move to approve the fourth quarter 2021 report for the Texas Maritime Museum.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Castelline. Yes, sir.
Morning, Judge Mills,
Good morning.
Commissioner, Mr. Cheney,
Yes, sir.
Casterline, Ms. Laubach, and Ms. Russo. Good to see you. Thank you again for having me. I'll try to keep this short. As I always do, I like to start with something fun just to get you guys interested. If you go to the next slide, or do I control it with this? There we go. Battle of San Jacinto, fought April 21st, 1836, in present-day LaPorte, Pasadena, Texas. In Pasadena, Texas, that was a final and decisive battle of the Texas Revolution. But before this happened, the Texan or Texian army, as they were called back then, thought they were on the losing side. Harrisburg, modern-day Houston, had already been burned, and Galveston was about to be evacuated and similarly destroyed to keep it out of Mexican hands. After this decisive defeat of the Mexican army and the capture of Santa Ana, the burning of Galveston luckily was prevented. This is a new piece of artwork that is going into the museum. It was finished about 2 weeks ago by my friend Pete Reisenbacher. After the battle, 4 men in a rowboat went all the way down Buffalo Bayou, all the way to Galveston. Took them several days. And this is the first contact they made with the Texas fleet that was getting ready to evacuate. And this is where they're giving off celebratory fire and letting the rest of the city know they do not have to evacuate and they do not have to burn. So this is a new piece going in. We should have it in the next few weeks as part of our expanding Texas Navy exhibit. So if you guys ever want copies of these, let me know. On to our general numbers. As to be expected, our fourth quarter had a lower number of attendance than the last few months of summer and beginning of fall, going from 2,570 visitors to 1,700, which is a 29% decrease in attendance, but this will increase again once we move into the first quarter of the new fiscal year, which introduces all of our programs. We've already seen an increase in attendance with our lecture series and our other programs that we have restarted after 2020 and 2020 and a lull in 2021 as well. So for this quarter, we've seen a 48% positive increase between last quarter's 154 out-of-state visitors in the fourth quarter, 228 visitors. Overall, the combined difference between 2020 and 2021 did not vary much. It was only about an 8% increase, but that was good for out-of-state. So we're still getting those types of visitors. Also to be expected, for our fourth quarter attendance, people traveling 70 plus miles out of Rockport has decreased from 1,536 to 544 people. So that's a 64% decrease. But yet overall, the year was substantially better with an increase of 131% with 5,396 people compared to 2020's 2,336 people. So we're getting our numbers back. The overall attendance for this year was wonderful. It was over 10,000 people as compared to 2020's 5,500 people. So that is an 82% increase in attendance. So kind of a final summary comparing up several of the years. These numbers are showing full attendance between 2016 and 2021. I would say that means we're back in business and back on track, and the Maritime Museum is moving forward again. In terms of our expenditures, the support that the county has given us, as always, has been extremely helpful to our continued operation. As you can see in this sheet, the museum respectfully asks for the county's granted curatorial and education costs to remain the same. We really do appreciate all that you guys do for us. Just going to tell you a few last things. Basically, now that our education director has had about almost a year of service and time to create these new fun programs for the museum, we have those programs back on track now. We've had an incredible turnout for these events. It was, Halloween, our Halloween haunt, we had over 500 kids. It was pretty insane. Shelley and I had a blast spinning cobwebs all over the museum and making it into a haunted museum. We might have gone a little bit overboard, but the infamous pirate, Captain Guillermo Portobello, up in the middle bottom, returned to the museum to continue our yearly scavenger hunt and tell ghost stories around the fire. That's me. So we also had some other fun things for the kids. We had a fantastic pumpkin decorating contest where kids and parents went wild with their imaginations. Here are some of the top winners. Some of the more clever designs I've ever seen. The pumpkin number one, that was the blowfish, pufferfish. That was our winner. And that's the one that we got to post on our website and give them an award. Our other programs are going well. Our ACE program, Fulton Learning Center, the field trips. Here you can see our docent, Jack Lawrence, teaching kids how to maneuver the yard arm. That was the newer exhibit that went up last year. Our after-school Odyssey enrichment program has been going really well. The numbers of attendance are back to where they should be, pre-2020, 2021. And finally, we were able to have our Maritime Gala this year, which was previously called the Bell Ball. Thank you. I did see quite a few of you guys there. This was a really good fundraiser for us. We're happy that we were able to have it after having to cancel in 2020. So this was very good for the museum. Also, we enjoyed being able to participate with the rest of Aransas County in Tropical Christmas, Christmas in the District, Christmas in the Park. We thank all the other shops and other nonprofits for allowing us to participate and join in. That's a lot of fun for us, and it makes us as the museum feel welcome to be part of this community. Sorry if my voice is a little hoarse. We're trying to get it back from COVID. So thank you for your time, and as always, your continued support of the Maritime Museum. You guys are always wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it looks like you got quite a following in young people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's great. That's great.
My goal when I got here was to absolutely make this a kid-friendly museum, and we're in the process of doing that.
That's great.
You're going to see some really wonderful things this next fiscal year. So
Good.
We'll keep you guys updated.
Thank you for all you do for the county and the grown-ups and the children.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me.
Justin,
Yes, ma'am.
just a couple of observations.
Sure.
And I realize that some of this report is a continuation of the reports that we were receiving before you were in place as the executive director. As far as the international museum visitors, that's such a small number. I don't know that we really need to see that graph. If you want to just say, we had visitors from X countries, that might be helpful. And the information about visitors coming from 70 plus miles, if you could summarize also maybe the 4 or 5 major metropolitan areas
Sure.
that send those visitors. And then when you do the comparison of 2020 to 2021, or next time it'll be 2021 to 2022, if we could see both of those figures on a graph just to see.
Absolutely.
But overall, I salute the work that you and the board and your volunteers are doing, and it's just a huge improvement. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll take care of that. Thank you guys so much for having me and allowing me to continue.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous.
I move to approve the fourth quarter 2021 report for the Rockport Cultural Arts District. I'll second that.
Motion made, second, Commissioner Cheney. Come on up, man. Jennifer.
Jennifer Day, Executive Director of the Rockport Cultural Arts District, 902 East Cornwall Street. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your time. We are designated by the state of Texas one of only 51 within the state. We always list our 5-year strategic plan, our focused areas, and you'll see as I go through this report, we continue to focus on those and make headway. So 2 major projects that we've continued to work on, continue to make great progress with, and that is the acquisition restoration of the Rockport Railroad Depot. These are things that were actually accomplished prior to this past quarter that I'm reporting on, but I wanted to just kind of bring you through the process. It was quite a big project. It's still a big project, but we've gotten the exterior. These are accomplishments for the fourth quarter. We got it painted. It looks fantastic. And what a great, great asset for the district. These are, again, additional accomplishments for fourth quarter. We're continuing to get funding. We just got a check from Castaways yesterday, which was fabulous. I gave out over $400,000 to local nonprofits yesterday, and we were blessed to receive a donation, or excuse me, a grant award for the interior, which is where we are starting now. We continue to get donations and artifacts. I had a gentleman reach out to me last week. He's got some brass plaques that are San Antonio Aransas Pass plaques. We've got things kind of coming out of the woodwork of donations, which is fantastic. These are our donors, which we definitely appreciate Aransas County supporting the Cultural Arts District, and we need to add Castaways to this list. We continue to collaborate with a lot of different entities, and that is a baseline for the Cultural Arts District to collaborate not only on the depot project, but on all of our projects that we're doing. We're working with Texas AgriLife Master Gardeners right now, and not only the footprint around the depot, but kind of looking past that to working with John and the contractors for the plants that will mirror the ones that go around the depot. So what you're looking at is not 2 different projects, but you're really kind of looking at one masterpiece when you look at the depot. We're continuing with our heritage tourism package. We're hoping to open the depot within the next 2 months, which is pretty aggressive. We still have interior work to be done. And with that, we will offer the tourism package with the other main historic venues within Rockport Fulton, and that's the Fulton Mansion, the History Center for Aransas County, the Texas Maritime Museum, and the Railroad Depot. Another major project that we have, these are very few slides here, but it is a very important project. It's a huge project, both financially and just the accomplishment of the sculptures. This is a Steve Russell Sculptures. And this is in partnership with the Aransas County NAV District. This is a series of 2 bronze 9-foot sculptures that will sit at Little Bay. And the European series is at the Foundry. They've been at the Foundry since last August. They should be coming out within the next few months. And then Steve is working on the Native Indian, American Indian series, and we'll get those to the Foundry as well. That's just a very big, long project, but we're continuing to make progress on it. Other initiatives we worked on in fourth quarter, we've had district merchant meetings each month. And this is very important for collaboration with the downtown merchants that kind of get on the same page, different themes to do. We sponsored the Halloween in the District, and you can see Texas Maritime, Merchant Shops, First Learning Tree, Church Unlimited, and then there was also Rocktoberfest, which Augie championed. And so it was a really great time in the district. This was a map that Justin Parkoff generated. Thank you very much, Justin. Continue to support the initiatives in the district. Got some great pictures of some Halloweeners. The streets were filled during Halloween in the district. It was a lot of fun. We handed out candy. Kids had a great, fun, safe place to be. These are the zip codes that were collected. And also Project Graduation had an opportunity to raise funds during this event. We continued to champion again this year the lighting in the district with all the merchants. We also did Vintage Christmas at the Railroad Depot. This was for 3 Saturday afternoons. It's a lot of fun. We had the San Antonio Ragtime Society perform. We also had Dr. Bill Ricketts, our own local PhD, who has a private collection of vintage phonographs, sheet music, and records. It was really educational and a lot of fun. This is not something you see every day, so we hope to continue with these types of exhibits. We also were a part of Christmas in the District. A lot of fun, everything from Little Kinetic Movement Center, Kinetic Dance Center, little performers to hot cocoa with the Grinch. This was just a lot of fun. There was so much to do. We also sponsored the Angel Tree Foster Children, and this was something that drove visibility. We had these little ornaments on trees within merchant stores in the district. It gave people an opportunity to contribute and help families that were not as fortunate. In addition to the wants of the children, the toys, we were also able to give them clothing, and we filled every list that there was, in addition to providing cash money for the foster families.
Let me give you a 3-minute warning.
3-minute warning. Okay. Talk fast. Okay, these are the zip codes collected during all of the December events. Social media, it pretty much says what it says. We're continuing to grow in social media, taking distant goals to raise that. These are our financials for year to date last year. And thank you from the Rockport Cultural Arts District Board. It's the end of my report. Questions?
Jennifer, I was in the depot the other day, looking really, really good.
Thank you. We're very proud of it.
And of course, the parking lot's going to be nice too.
Yes, absolutely.
Jennifer, this is a lot of work and good accomplishments. However, when we get these reports, and I know that I have mentioned in the past that Jen Austin and the treasurer and the auditor and I are coming up with a template. We are going to ask for a limit on just the photographs and to get bullets for the summaries.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, and that's a good thing. I also would ask if you have a breakdown in the future of the originating source of those visitors who are
Sure.
75 plus miles out, that you could provide that to us.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how it's provided, but when we received the statement of activities, the year-to-date ending December 31st,
Mhm.
it was on 2 separate pages, so the headings didn't carry over. And for some reason, my document was stapled back to front. So when I started out and was looking at the statement of activities, the first page I saw was the expenditures. And so there were no titles on those columns. But if there's some way to condense that down or work with the judge's office, that could be shot landscaped or portrait, whichever it takes, maybe without the logo, just so we can see it all on one page. That would be very
Okay.
helpful.
All right. I'll work on that.
I'm
Thank
trying to
you,
get sort of a template done, so all these reports look the same. and
will.
you can, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But a lot of good work.
Thank you.
Jennifer,
Yes.
I like the pictures. Keep them.
Well,
I do
visuals,
too.
visuals, most people are visual, and so
It's good to get efficient. I mean,
Mhm.
It really is.
Absolutely.
But this is, you get 4 times a year to show Commissioners Court and the public what's going on.
Mhm.
And to me, this report is a lot more than just figures.
Yeah.
This report is a history of what you've been doing. And we can look over the years and everything. It's a pictorial history of what's going on. And I really like it that way. I don't want that to change.
I like the pictures, but if the financial reporting can be, if we can make it consistent
Yeah.
among all the people who get hot funds, it'll be a lot easier for us to just
Agree.
compare how the funds are being used.
And we want to provide you what you want. We just, not real sure. So that'll help. That'll help when we have the template. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Commissioner Cheney,
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Casterline,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 7.
I move to approve the fourth quarter 2021 report for the Friends of the History Center.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second to Mr. Cheney.
I feel like it's almost afternoon.
Yeah,
Good morning
it
to the
is.
court. Pam Stranahan from the Friends of the History Center. I'd like to mention, first of all, we are not supported by your HOT funding. We are a project that's part of Aransas Pathway. So we're sort of a different animal as far as what you're looking at with some of these other institutions. Anyway, during you have the details in front of you, but I'd like to talk from the slides that you see. During 2021, we were open 4 days a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We feel like that's a good time to be open for the people in the county and for visitors. We're told we stay open, especially on Monday, because many things close on Monday. So we're happy to be open then. We really focus on the history of Aransas County. And so each time that we bring a new exhibit, it's really deep into the history of our county. And our first exhibit this year was quilting during the pandemic. And this was in partnership with Peacemakers Guild. Our second exhibit, was Places in Time. And again, we like to bring to the forefront all of the wonderful historic sites that we have in the county. So we featured many, many of those sites that are actually marked by historic markers. And we have a guide that goes with that that's put out by the pilot. So we want to encourage tourists to venture around the county. So our Places in Time featured those homes and those sites, 2 shots of that. Next, we brought up Voices from the Past. I hope you all have all seen this. This is an exhibit that will be up for the next 2 to 3 years. That's all about the county. It's a timeline of Aransas County built here because of the bays. And as you look at this, you see a topical timeline that really brings the interest of the people home. Again, we had other exhibits that were in conjunction with our Hummingbird Festival. We feature Connie Hager, and then we have Holidays Past as a December exhibit that's always popular. Our volunteers contributed over 2,310 hours, and that would be valued at over $57,000. We really appreciate all of our volunteers that keep the History Center open on the weekends. And we take a lot of information out to the community. We actively work with the Tropical Trail, which is a THC-sponsored event. And we, of course, participated in many, many sesquicentennial events. We also stay in contact with the DRT. Went to Corpus Christi to that DRT to talk about our community. We always talk to the leadership class about our history, give lectures at the Fulton Mansion, book clubs, and we participated in Shop Small to really encourage people to come during that time in November. Our media is very popular. We have a Facebook of over 3,000 subscribers, and we feel really good about that, keeping up with them. But most of all, I appreciate your support and the support of Jennifer Hurd and John Strothman, who work with us through Pathways. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And y'all do quite a job there. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Pam, do you want to mention the March 6th presentation that's upcoming?
Certainly.
The Vietnamese.
Right. That would be in our January report. We have an exhibit right now that is the Vietnamese culture, 40 years on the coastal bend. And we've had a really good response to that. And we have monthly programs. The next program that Pat mentioned is March 6th that will be at the Maritime Museum. And it will be veterans speaking their thoughts about the Vietnamese War or the Vietnam War. So it'll be both South Vietnamese and U.S. troops that participated in that conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. County roads. Item
I move to approve the acceptance of a 20-foot wide drainage easement from Contiki Beach Resort Partners LP, which will provide the outfall for the Fulton Beach Landing subdivision located near 2261 North Fulton Beach Road.
Second.
That.
Motion made and seconded. Commissioner Cheney.
I have a question or two. Is this easement going to only be used for drainage?
Yes, it is a drainage easement.
All right. And is the county anticipating building anything here now or in the near future?
This is the outfall for that subdivision. What is it? Fulton Landing.
Fulton Landings, I think.
And that will be built. It's possible down the road the county will, I mean, it is county easement, so we could use it if we need to.
So right now, is it just water flowing over the top, or are we putting in a pipe or a culvert, or what are we doing?
It is a channel.
It's like an open ditch, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's across the street, water side of Fulton Beach Road. There's a pipe going up, will go under Fulton Beach Road, draining into that channel.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 9.
I move to approve the acceptance of a correction instrument for drainage easement, which will replace the exhibits A and B that were erroneously attached to the drainage easement in 2016, so that the new exhibits A and B will describe the correct property, and authorizing the county judge to execute the document.
Motion made. I'm second. Second, Commissioner Castelline.
I have a question about that. How did we have the wrong exhibits attached to that initially? And I realized this was 5 or 6 years ago.
Is it just a property description and it was the wrong property?
Right. There were several easements going on at the same time, same location or similar location. The wrong description got put with
The exhibits that were attached were for the same drainage project, just a different portion of the easement. So it was an easy mistake. It just got mixed up in the shuffle when they were recording various instruments at the same time.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item number 10.
I move to approve order number 002-2022 regarding the petition of Trudy Hutchings to close, abandon, and vacate the platted 60-foot wide portion of Ash Street lying between Lot 16, Block 92, and Lot 9, Block 93, Lamar Town Site, Aransas County, Texas, recorded in Volume 2, page 36 of the plat records of Aransas County, Texas, and being more particularly described by meets and bounds on Exhibit A and B attached to the petition.
I second that.
Motion made, second, Commissioner Russo. Any discussion?
Now, we had some controversy over this, but it seems that the fellow most concerned arrived this morning and said he was okay with it. Now, I know Kat put together an elaborate presentation, but maybe we don't need, just give us a quick description of what we're doing.
The presentation was specifically to address the concerns that Mr. Murphy had raised at the January 10th meeting. And I sent that presentation to him as well. And if the concerns were addressed, then if there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those but if you don't want to go through another presentation, I would also totally understand and be happy not to give the presentation.
What were his basic concerns?
His primary concerns was that it would possibly be a violation of the Texas Open Beaches Act, which in short, it doesn't qualify because it faces a Copano Bay, not the shores of the Gulf of Mexico, which makes it not regulated through the Texas Open Beaches Act, and concerns that it would violate any private property owners' access rights, and just addressing what the statutory provisions say as far as what your rights are and what the situation would necessitate for.
So the Texas Open Beaches Act only deals with the Gulf, right?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't deal with the bays or estuaries or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it doesn't. or yes,
Correct. It does not. It does not, including like the Laguna Madre. But that's an area that's probably the best example of not included in the Texas Open Beaches Act. And but yeah, Copano Bay is included in that as well.
Okay.
Kat, you provided us with that presentation, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I thought so, because I'd looked through that online. Thank you.
I think the maps finally made it plain kind of how the different rights of access to the street worked and how the rights to the water worked and whose property was where. It must have finally sort of clicked with Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Kat. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 11.
I move to approve Order O-03-2022 regarding the petition of Mary Thornhill to close, abandon, and vacate the platted 60-foot wide portion of Pine Street lying between Lot 15R, Block 91, and Lot 9, Block 92, Lamar Town Site, Aransas County, Texas, recorded in Volume 2, page 36 of the plat records of Aransas County, Texas, and being more particularly described by meets and bounds on Exhibit A and B attached to the petition.
I second that.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Russo.
Now, this is
Question?
similar to the other, only just down a block. The two of them are sort of together quite close to each other. Same issue with Mr. Murphy and the same resolution.
Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item number 12.
I move to approve resolution R05-2022 for the fiscal year 2021 Homeland Security Grant Program, grant number 3171805, effective March 1st, 2022, and authorize the county judge to execute necessary documents.
I'll second that.
So this is the Stone Garden, is that right? Okay.
I have a question. What is the required match from the county for this?
% grant funded.
So zero matching.
All right. And then is there equipment that's funded or is it for overtime hours?
It's both.
Vehicles and overtime and vehicles?
Yes, vehicles. Sometimes it's license plate readers. It just depends on.
Radios.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you give us a scale, dollar scale? How much do we get every year?
It also varies every year.
Just
when the
roughly.
State approves this year, this grant, I believe it was over $800,000.
Okay.
Correct. Not all county. It is shared with the city.
Okay.
Any further questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous.
Judge, can we go back to item number 11? I think there's a problem there. I just happened to see it. On the agenda memo, it's listed as block 93, lot 9. On the recommended motion, it's listed as block 91. I'm confused. I just noticed that.
It might be a matter that the order and the agenda memos, since it's two right-of-ways in between, the first is in between block 91 and 92, and the second is in between block 92 and 93. It might just be a matter that the agenda memo might have gotten in the wrong order with the order.
If I read off the summary, it may be that I need to correct it to conform to the actual agenda. I just want to make sure it got read into the record properly. And if I was reading off of
How
the
it
summary
is
page.
on the agenda, is that correct?
Yeah, if the okay.
And
so we
that's how
can-
it is
we
on
can
the-
conform it. Can it be conformed in the minutes, or do I need to read it from the agenda?
It was your intent to read the item as it
From
was
the
listed
agenda.
on the agenda, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
So
I
the
think that
memo was wrong.
the memo may have been in the wrong order,
Okay.
Commissioner. But the
Okay,
agenda
I
was
just
correct.
I was
Okay.
confused. Thank you.
Item number 12.
Item 13.
Oh, 13, I'm sorry.
I move to approve authorizing Mercer Construction DBA Land Engineering to solicit bids for construction of the Texas Community Development Block Grant. Colonia Grant number 7219025.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Lobach.
John, are you handling this on the agenda?
Who is this? Is this David?
Oh, Jackie?
Myself and Jackie.
I did not receive any documentation in our agenda packet about this. Was there anything that we were to review?
I don't know, Commissioner Russo, if you received anything. This is just an authorizing us to rebid on a project that we had already gotten ready to bid on. And the city changed some of their requirements.
Well,
Okay,
that,
Commissioner
what
Castro,
happened,
I
the
can talk
city's
later.
engineer at the last minute came up with an issue. And so we had to redo some of it. This is the grant project that's down on 8th Street, south of town, that there's going to be a lift station and certain amount of sewer lines. And at the last minute, the city's engineer came up with something he didn't agree with, and we had to go back and do a little redesign and correct it where they approved it. So now we're ready to go back out for bids again.
Thank you.
Commissioner Castellan, Judge, Rachel from Grant Works is also on if we have any questions for her.
Okay. Questions for Rachel? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castellan,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lobach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item 14.
I move to approve authorizing the county judge to sign Form A-505, construction contract change order for the Texas Department of Agriculture, TDA, Colonia contract number 7219490, reducing the total project cost by $13,847.05, and approve a 40-day extension to complete the project.
I second that motion.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Russo.
Might get Rachel to comment on this because I know Pat.
We have someone right here.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're all right.
How you doing?
Commissioner Russo had a question about the extension and the reduction being, because actually the project ended on the 31st
Of January, right?
of January.
That's correct. My name is Eric Fiati. I'm with Ardura, formerly LNV, and I'm the engineer of record on the project.
Okay.
Commissioners, this item will not extend it beyond the date that the project concluded. This is basically a cleanup item to go back and reduce the total contract cost and to acknowledge that it did take longer to complete the work than initially anticipated. But no additional work is needing to be done at this point.
Right.
That's
And
correct.
fortunately, Commissioner Casterline explained that to me, that the work was complete and that a sewer line was located, which reduced part of the cost. And then some of the initial people who had said they wanted the project pulled out. So not quite as much work had to be provided as the initial scope.
That's correct. And also we're cleaning up the contract amount to make sure that it did not exceed the grant funds.
That's a good thing. And I'm sorry, sir, what company did you say you?
It's called Ardura Group. We were formerly LNV Engineering out of Corpus Christi.
And that's ARDURE, DURA.
ARDURRA, correct.
RRA, thank you.
Any further questions for him?
I think that the project turned out real good.
Yeah, looks
We
great.
got a Garo Construction was somebody that had never bid, and their work turned out real good, at least what I've saw. So it's good to have somebody else in the mix to bid on this stuff.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline, Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item 15.
I move to approve accepting a proposal from Hanson Professional Services, Inc. for a drainage study of the Lamar Beach Road, 4th Street watershed, authorizing the county judge to sign a task order for professional services with Hanson Professional Services, Inc. under the Master Professional Services Agreement, with the cost of services being fixed at $41,000 and being paid for through flood control budgeted funds.
Second that.
Motion made and second. Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item 16.
I move to approve entering into a purchase and sale agreement between St. Charles Properties LLC and Aransas County, Texas, for the purchase of approximately 11.934 acres of land located in lots 6, Block E, and Lot 3, Block H, in the Goose Island Estates, a subdivision in Aransas County, Texas, for a portion of the property often recognized as the Lamar Golf Course, for the purchase price of $157,907. Sorry, $151,907, contingent upon the submission and acceptance of a final plat, with closing to occur within 30 days, and authorize the county judge to sign necessary documents.
Second.
Motion made and second. Commissioner Casterline. Any discussion?
I would love to have David come up and talk to us about this briefly. I know we've talked about it before, but because we're buying something that was recently bought, I just, whenever something is moved and flipped like that, I like the public to hear an explanation of how it all came about.
Before you do that, David, I just want to point out, this is, some of you may have an agenda. If you got one of the ones that came in at the second batch that reflect a different number, the number is 151,907, in case there's any confusion on that.
Thank you. Okay, Dave.
Okay, the seller, Mr. Aston, bought this property, 24 acres or whatever. He was really only interested in certain parts of it and approached me about if the county had an interest in the remainder. And we did. It's important for drainage on Lamar, and also the Mud District had an interest in it because that's where they spray their effluent. So we had lots of conversations between the three of us and determined that it was in our best interest to buy a portion of that. And the Mud District, I think, will be voting on buying a portion of it as well, maybe.
I mean, to go back in time a little, we have been interested in buying this property for a long time, but couldn't come to terms with the prior owner. So it was only when it was bought by Mr. Aston that we began to be able to make progress in negotiations.
Correct.
And the price for the prior owner was substantially higher than.
Oh, yeah.
Do we know what the prior owner sold it for to Mr. Aston? I'm not even sure I've ever heard that number.
I think that he was asking us.
More than what we're paying for the portion we're buying. If you look at the numbers that David did a spreadsheet on, the owner will be paying for, will not be compensated for the portion he's retaining, but the portion that the county is purchasing and the portion that ACMUD is purchasing, he will be essentially paid exactly what he paid.
So even though he's even if he keeps those four pieces and develops them, is, I mean, I expect that he might make a profit up this, and I don't have a problem with it. But if you're saying he's just going to break even simpler.
I think he's going to make a small profit.
It's not significant though. It's very
Small-
close to what
But
he
most of
paid.
that
And
profit
he-
is going to be in the property that he retained.
Yeah, and he accommodated us enormously by stepping in. We were not able to get this deal done until he bought it. So if he bought it, took risk, put a lot of money and spent some time and had to worry about whether we would follow through, he's done everything we ever needed to do. And we have now ended up with the property we needed.
Correct.
And it didn't appear, we were never gonna make a deal with the previous owner.
That was
for
not
whatever
happening.
reason, he was-
I've been working with him for, I don't know, 10 years. Something.
All right, any further questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous.
I move to approve.
17.
Approve the proposed change order number 1 for the Rockford Center of the Arts Parking and Public Facilities Improvement Project contract with Marshall Company General Land. Office contract number 20-065-098 C270 to address a calculation error on pricing for Natchez Creek myrtles and to add a required domestic preference clause, which will increase the total contract price from $636,723.57 to $641,000.
John, what is our?
Second.
Oh, I second that.
Second.
I second it.
Go ahead.
Now, what is our actual cost on this? I know we've got these figures here and they're come to us.
That's our actual cost.
Okay,
But-
but that's through,
We're not out of pocket.
we're not, that's not. out
Oh,
of
no, the
pocket.
county is paying, this is 100% grant.
Okay.
This is CDBGDR
Okay.
grant.
Do we have, once this is done and paid for and everything, is there any provision or any way that we can protect ourselves against massive loss due to inclement weather or stuff like that? Because $600,000 is a lot of money to have to replace something.
No, this is just, that's the whole grant. That's the whole project. That's,
It says not just the crepe myrtles.
no. No. What happened was the contractor and the engineer came back to us right after they had proposed the first number, 636,000. And that was, they said, we made a mistake on our bidding. Can we adjust our number? So it was prudent to say, no, let's move forward with the original number and we'll come back with a change order to meet up the difference in the plantings.
So how much is crepe myrtles?
Probably about 4,000.
$4,276.43 is the additional cost.
Right.
And this, even though the amount is changing, it's still 100% grant covered. None of this. affects us.
100% grant covered.
And as you know, I sent you a question that I got over the weekend about why we're using crepe myrtles and not something approved by the Heritage District list. So could you address that?
Well, all I can address it is we hired as part of the package, a landscape engineer was hired and he did the landscaping plan. So I don't have a better answer than that, and he should be aware of the Heritage District.
All right, any further discussion?
Yes, thanks. And for the record, I like crepe myrtles and I think they're beautiful and I'm glad he picked them.
Okay.
On this project, at the or on your agenda item memo that was attached in the packet, when it finishes talking about the increase amount caused by the error, and you've already disclosed
Right.
that that was either the engineer or the contractor's
Contractor.
error, not ours. It says the project involves, and then it's a blank line highlighted. Is that an error?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to look at that.
Okay,
I'm just, I can tell you what happened.
Yes, please.
We were in a bit of a time crunch to get the agenda materials together. So Tracy and I were working on that and I did help create a memo to go into the materials. And that was actually part of a template that I'd created to give to department heads. It should have been removed. It was an error and my
right.
fault. And I
So we're
apologize.
not approving some mysterious
No.
No, you are not.
scope of work. All right, that's fine. And I think this is a great project. My concern, and I know you said that this is 100% funded by the grant, but one way that projects increase in their price is through change orders. And I'm just hopeful that we don't see continuing change orders from this contractor that will eventually boost the cost of this project to much more than we anticipated.
This, it shouldn't. This is a pretty simple project,
Okay, thank you, John.
very simple project.
Thank you, John. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Item 18.
Move to approve the January 2022 indigent healthcare report.
Second.
Motion made, second, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion?
I have a question for Ms. Cartwright. Okay. Under the hospital inpatient services, just for general information, the number of hospitalized patients, I'm thinking this time might have been one because of the amount.
Actually, it was just one on the
Okay, thank you.
indigent. It was an indigent client, not an inmate.
All right.
We did have a hospital visit from an inmate that was $511,000. That's not the part that we're going to pay, but it has not been run through accounts payable yet.
The $511,000 that the county won't pay, who will pay?
Well, we only pay about 30,000 of it, paying it at the Medicaid rate, which, you know,
All
one
right.
hospital visit puts that person to the max, but that's not on here yet.
It's gonna be a surprise next time. Don't
Yeah,
worry, it's about-
surprise.
But you said that once you transfer it over to what the Medicaid rate would be, that would be about, what did you say, 30,000?
Close to 30,000 for one visit.
So this, it's not that the indigent patient's getting stuck with the other 480. They're just, the
Actually,
hospital's
this,
just
this
not.
was an inmate, but no,
Yeah.
that, I guess the hospital eats
Yeah.
that rest of part of it.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Item 19.
I move to approve the December 2021 treasurer's report.
Second it.
Motion made, second, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous.
Move to approve the fourth quarter treasurer's investment report.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Laubach. Any discussion?
I would like to make a comment on the interest earned. We did fall short of what we had budgeted, but that is beyond my control. Currently, I'm getting a little bit better in rates and investments, so hopefully this year we did not under budget, but we accrued and earned 77,822, but we had budgeted 173,400. So
And what's it
right
on?
at 45% of what we have budgeted on interest earned for the operating funds.
For the year ending, we were at 45% of what we budgeted. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. 21.
I move to approve a new job description for Director of Community Development at a pay group 25. This position replaces the project manager position. Can you, oh, we need a second.
Motion made and a second.
Who seconded?
I'll second it.
So can you tell us what's changing, John?
Just the title. That's it.
Okay.
Same work, same everything. same
So I'm
thing.
just confirming the pay group and step remain the same.
Same, stay the
All right.
same.
Congratulations on your new title if this passes.
All right.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous.
I move to approve a new job description for Administrative Assistant and Public Information Officer at a pay group 12 and Executive Assistant at a pay group 15 for the County Judge's Office.
I'll second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Castelline. Any
This is the one that
discussion?
that really confused me. Are we Are we creating, I understand that we're merging two jobs into one. Is the new job to pay the same as the total of the previous two, or are we just
No.
eliminating one?
Both of the positions were at the same pay group, so that it's going to stay in the same pay group it was. We're just combining the two jobs.
I guess I'm just asking, is the person who's taking over the now combined double job getting paid the same as the two paychecks together?
No.
Her
no.
paycheck's staying the same.
It'll stay
So
the
we're
same
saving
as
money
what-
by eliminating a position and that salary goes away completely.
At this point, yes.
Got it.
So the only changes we're really approving are just in job description, job duties, the titles, the pay groups still remain the same.
Right.
Well, except that one job is going completely away.
Yeah, the executive or the administrative assistant and the public information officer are being combined into one position.
So we used to have a slot and paid for the use of a PIO. That is going away. We're not going to be refilling that spot or spending that
we're
money.
not
That
gonna be-
money's coming back into the budget. Got it.
Any further
Some
discussion?
of the duties are moving into the,
Right.
Administrative assistant.
correct.
But she just gets duties added and no more money.
Well, we took
Nice.
some duties away too, so.
Oh, some of her duties were transferred to the executive assistant
Right.
because I didn't have the full job description in my packet. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lava,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item 23.
Move to approve a policy outlining the financial policy and procedures for Aransas County.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Laubach, any discussion?
Can we have a little brief description of changes perhaps?
Yes, Commissioner Cheney. We actually have adopted this last year. This is just to reaffirm it. But we did add some new policies because TCEQ has their own little things that they require in grant funds. And GLO has their own little items that they like to see in this. So we have combined all of them into this one financial policy. It basically will address things like supplanting. It will address things like the direct or indirect costs, just things that we
Cleaning it up.
normally have done anyway, but we are now stating them in the policy, so there's no question.
Further discussion?
Yes, Jackie, I had a question or two. Under section 8, advanced payment procedures, there's a statement in there about interest being earned on some of those funds. Does the county retain that interest earned?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then under, let's see. Indirect and direct costs, number 10. Costs will be calculated for administration based on the hours, salary, and benefits of the workers associated with the grant. Who performs that calculation?
We do in our office. It's what we call the force account labor. And so
Force
we
account?
have, it's force account labor. And that is, we use not only their salary, but benefits, and we have forms that we can calculate that out.
And that's done in the auditor's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lava,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. This next item is no surprise to me, and it shouldn't be to anyone on the commission. It's just, in my estimation, it might be 15 or 16 years too late or later. It should have been given a long time ago, what I'm trying to say. The presentation of a distinguished budget award from the Government and Finance Officers Association to Aransas County Auditors. We have a little deal here, and I think we got a photo op. Come on up, auditors.
Make sure my light's still working.
Boy, oh boy. Can't hide.
All my staff, Salvador Department head, on Pepper.
All right, is there a motion?
Second.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
It was, okay. Well, never mind.
I just want to ask who these people are and what their standards are, but I'll find out later.
All right, item 25.
I move to approve budget line item transfers and amendments.
Second.
Motion made,
If
second,
there are
Commissioner
any.
Cheney.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye.
Move to approve accounts payable and payroll liability.
Second it.
Motion made, second, Commissioner Cheney.
Anything unusual?
Well, there are some quite large ones. If you actually looked at the totals on here, we do have about 4 million that Alma was able to reinvest. And so it looks like we spent that money. We actually just put it into investments. We do have some pretty large projects in 430 in our capital funds, our reimbursable funds that were sent out. Other than that, the debt service payments were paid in here that I had brought previously to get approval to do those. Those actually are showing up in this report. So even though it looks like we've spent a whole lot of money, 4 million of it was just reinvested. So,
I just have one question.
okay.
When you took that check for $4 million to the bank, did they offer you coffee?
Actually, she didn't take
Toaster.
that check to the bank. She was taking it out of the bank and putting it in a pool.
You should
Or
at least
another
get a microwave
investment of
oven.
some type.
We weren't too happy with that.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Now's the time for any department heads or elected officials to bring up anything they'd like to.
That's your fees report.
Do we have fees or what? All right. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to say something and I know we can't do anything right now and I'm not sure this body is able to anyway, but just something to bring up. I had the unfortunate occasion to trip and fall and hit my head and go to emergency. And, this is something I had to get a CAT scan and so forth. And there was never a question for me. I was definitely going because a head injury is a very big thing. But the expense of it, because the emergency center doesn't, even though we are a large employer with Blue Cross Blue Shield, doesn't accept our insurance in, what's the word? It's in network. And I think that's something that should be looked at both with our insurance and all the other major employers in the area, because somebody else might make the decision not to do this, even though you have insurance. It was extremely costly for me. But as you all know from the Bob Saget thing, you can hit your head and not do anything and die. And it's, it's a real big thing. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Not only the facilities, but also the doctors and so forth. And so it's important for us to have these services, but it's also really good if they can be in our network.
So our ER, our local ER doesn't have
No,
Blue
she said the
Cross.
ambulance.
No, no ambulance. My husband
Our local ER, our new one. Our local ER doesn't have Blue Cross in its network.
We'll have to check into that because
I'm not sure. I also had the opportunity to be at the ER a couple of times this last 2 weeks. They told me that my visit with the ER would be in network, but the doctors that see you are not in
No.
network.
Nice.
Really?
Yes,
Huh.
sir.
well, we need to look into that. That's not acceptable. All right. Anything else?
I have any other directors or people? I have something from Mike Gear, our airport manager. He asked if I would mention this since he needed to leave, and since I'm the liaison to the board. He and a few others, Cody Stewart and some other folks out at the airport, have been working with ACISD Superintendent Josh Garcia in bringing in an aviation A&P, which is working on engine program to the school district. And in preparation for that, Joyce McClellan in our community donated an airplane from her family, and Mike facilitated that donation to ACISD. And so that will be a new item for the new program. It's an old airplane, and they will be learning to work on airplane motors with that. And so that's Mike's response. I have another item that's my own. I want to refer to the Aransas County Employee Handbook, which was revised in August 17th, 2020. Page 19, IC 13, political activity. Employees of the county are encouraged to vote and to exercise other prerogatives of citizenship consistent with state and federal law and their policies. County employees are not required to contribute to any political fund or render any political service to any person or party. No employee will be dismissed, suspended, demoted, or otherwise prejudiced for refusing to do so. An employee may not, 1, use his or her official authority or influence to interfere with or affect the result of an election, appointment, or nomination for office, or 2, directly or indirectly coerce, attempt to coerce, command, or advise a local or state officer or employee to pay, lend, or contribute anything of value to a party, committee, organization, agency, or person for a political purpose. County employees, except elected officials, may not participate in political activities while on county duty. Employees are expected to remove county uniforms before participating in a political activity. And in addition, no county-owned property, vehicle, building, and/or office may be used for displaying campaign materials or for conducting any partisan political activity. I mention this because in my neighborhood, a county vehicle went down one of the neighborhood streets a few days ago, stopped for a while in front of a home, and later the homeowner was contacted by a candidate, a current official, about the fact that an opponent sign was in the yard and not the elected official sign. I don't know if you can say that's been remedied or not. And I don't know if this was an isolated incident or not, but I believe it's inappropriate behavior. I would hate to think our county vehicles are out on the streets, taking notice of whose signs are in whose yard, and then those people are being contacted to replace or add signs. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really inappropriate. Thank you. Anything else? All right, do I have a motion?
Do you have a closed session on the agenda?
Oh,
Oh, right. I guess we need to move to go into closed session.
Yeah.
If you would, it would be very, very quick, I assure you.
okay, let's go into closed session then.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
And then a vote.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Casterline, Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Laubach.
Aye.
Judge Minutes.
Hi. Need an envelope, please, Carrie.
11:20 is fine. That's probably when I left. 11:20.
That's what I wrote down. So
Perfect. You are right.
we're coming out at 11:36.
Perfect.
I second that.
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right.